Hey everyone, feeper here with another video for you. It's no secret that many video games either revolve around or incorporate some form of combat. Whether it be turn-based, action, FPS shooter, or whatever, combat is a crucial part of many video games and is something that if done wrong, can ruin the entire game. So, with something so crucial to a game's success, one might wonder what makes good combat and what makes bad combat. Well, there are many factors, some of which come down to personal taste, but the thing that I want to focus on in this video are sound effects and sound design. Good sound design will heighten the game to new levels, while bad design can derail it quickly. In this video, I'm going to show you how the language of combat is spoken through sound, and how sound design tells the player more about combat than the visuals do. So there are three parts of any attack that are the most important: the wind up before you hit something, you hitting your target or missing, and the finishing part of the animation after you hit or miss. You can think of these three parts as the basic outline of a story, with the wind up to the hit being the rising action, the hit itself being the climax, and then everything after being the falling action. Depending on the circumstances of the attack, sound design plays a role in all three of these stages. The point of designing an attack isn't just so that there's a sound when you hit something, it's also there to give the animation weight and impact. Games are about creating experiences, and in order to create combat that gives you the experience of, say, being Geralt of Rivia, or feel like swinging this giant Zweihander in Dark Souls as opposed to a short sword, you need to add weight to the animation. But how do you add weight to something that a person can't physically interact with? Well, you can't, but you can give the illusion of weight. This is successfully accomplished by combining many aspects, any of which have the chance to derail the end result, but without good sound, it doesn't matter how good everything else is. If the attack makes no sound, then it will feel floaty, weak, and it won't give you the feeling of actually hitting something. When you hit something in real life, you often encounter a resistance from what you hit, and then that travels through your body. But once again, we can't incur any physical response to the player from a digital interaction, aside from, I guess, vibration in a controller, so we have to give the illusion of it. To summarize up to this point, every attack has three crucial parts to it: the before, during, and after. And in order to make combat feel engaging and hook the player, we need to design the attack and line up with other forms of feedback such as controller vibration, screen shaking, animation speed, etc. So I'm going to give you guys an example. I'm going to play the sound of an attack from a game a few times in a row, and as you listen, I want you to imagine what sort of attack this is. Is it slow? Is it fast? Does it charge up for some sort of big hit? Does it sound like it's really impactful and doing a lot of damage? Or does it sound like it's not doing anything to the target? Stuff like that. So right away, there's a bunch of information we can get just based off of listening to this attack. First off, this weapon is clearly pretty large because the time between attacks is fairly long. Next, there appears to be some sort of waiting and charging mechanic happening. And lastly, the attack is probably doing a good bit of damage because the time between the attack hitting its target and then hitting the ground is fairly long, which indicates that not only is it probably almost stunning its target, it's probably, you can feel that resistance in the user of the weapon as well. Here's another example from the same game. Listen to how this weapon feels innately different to the previous one, purely based off of how it sounds. The most obvious thing from this second example is that this weapon has a lot of wide swings. You can hear the weapon whooshing, and yes, that's a real term, through the air as you swing it. The time between attacks is also less than the weapon before, so it means that A, it's either lighter than the previous weapon, or B, if it's just as heavy, then it requires much more momentum to do these faster attacks. Lastly, there's some sort of explosion of electricity at the end, which is pretty cool. Just off of these two examples, you can already begin to hear the language of combat through these sound effects. Now I'm going to play you both of these clips back to back, but without the sound. You'll see that even though you can feel some of the impact and weight of these moves, they aren't fully realized without the sound effects, and they leave a lot to be desired. So I clearly think that Monster Hunter World does a pretty good job of speaking the language of combat with its sound design. The reason why hitting that final true charge slam on the greatsword in that first example feels so good and so satisfying is because of how it sounds to hit that final big move. This idea applies to every aspect of combat in any game, whether it be blocking and parrying in Sekiro, to an ultimate move in Octopath, or shooting literally any gun in Call of Duty. So what's an example of a game that does this poorly? Well, we need to look no further than Skyrim. Now I know many people love Skyrim, and while I'm not a big fan of the game, I totally understand why. I'm not trying to bash anyone for liking the game here, but I do think the combat in this game is pretty abysmal and the sound design is a big part of it for me. I'm going to play you a clip of me fighting something here, and I want you to notice how floaty, weightless, and just not impactful the combat feels based off of how it sounds.
Gods, no. Do your work. I cannot.
I can tell I'm dealing damage to the enemy because their health is going down, but when I hit them with my sword or my axe, I feel like I'm just kind of swinging through the air. I don't actually feel like I'm colliding with another person or a bear or whatever it is that you're fighting. And honestly, there have been times where I played this game and I literally can't tell if I'm hitting something, and I just have to stare at the health bar and be like, oh, okay, I am actually hitting something. The reason for this is because, unlike in the last examples where there were sound effects for pretty much every part of the animation that I outlined earlier in the video, in Skyrim it's pretty much just play generic sound effect when you hit the enemy. If I play the clip with no sound, you're honestly not going to notice much of a difference. These hits aren't communicating anything to the player, they're just glorified placeholders. Again, one reason why this is because there's no sound effect for the first part and the last part of the animation, it's just when you hit the target. Another reason for this is because the actual sound effect for hitting someone doesn't have much low information in it, it's mostly just high frequencies. There's no thud when you hit someone, there's no impact, it's just like metal scraping on some weird other metal surface. I don't really know how to describe it. It doesn't feel like you're cutting through someone or hitting someone. The sound effect for missing is way too similar to the sound effect for hitting. There's no real good sound effect for blood splatters. It gets overshadowed by everything else. There's just, I think you all get the idea by now. Combat in Skyrim looks and feels like you're swinging at the air the whole time because it sounds like you're swinging at the air the whole time. You'll also notice in this next clip of a finisher move that the slow motion slice isn't properly timed with the actual hit. It's about 3/10 to half a second behind.
That's your best, huh? Oh well. Must have run off.
You do get a nice thud at the beginning of this animation, but by the time you hear the slicing, my character's arm is actually already behind me. In other words, the sound effect for the hit or the climax is actually playing during the falling action. So with those examples, I hope you all get a better idea of why sound design and sound effects are so important to combat. When things are firing on all cylinders, you get this really engaging combat like in Sekiro or Monster Hunter World, and when things don't line up right or they just don't sound good at all, it sounds like you're just chopping at the air like in Skyrim. And that's going to be the end of this video. Thank you to everyone who has made it this far in the video, and if you want to continue to support me, then please check me out over at twitch.tv/feeper7. I stream every day of the week except for Monday and Thursday. Feel free to drop a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and with that, I will see you all in the next one. Peace. If you guys liked the video, please leave a like and subscribe. Other than that, I'll see you all in the next one.